Hello, my astrology friends. This is Lada from AstroladaOfficial. And today my guest is the incredible Marina Stoichkova, who will be talking about one of my most favorite topics. Hello, Marina.
Hi, Lada. Hi, nice to be here.
Great to see you. And
Yes.
what have you prepared for us today?
So today we will talk about some important and some really deep stuff. So we will discuss how and actually what triggers the most intense transformations astrologically, so that people can understand what is happening, why it is happening. This is a very big question when you're going through this and you want to understand what is going on, how to prepare, what to expect. And of course, we will talk about transformation, which comes from the outer planets, because that's the real deep transformation. So Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. It could be about transits, it could be about progressions, it could be triggered by other methods you might be using, but how we process the energy that comes from those most intense and powerful planets, and what defines actually the way we will process this energy. Because as we know, we have a variety of options, and some of them, let's say, might be quite challenging. Others might be absolutely incredible and can bring actually the most exciting and meaningful experiences in life. So that's what we will talk about today. Yes.
And by the way, that's a part of event that you're doing, which is astrological online retreat. So it's
Yes.
going to be next week. Which day is it? The
It's
alchemical.
the first weekend of February, 4th and 5th, I believe, of February, Saturday and Sunday. It's called Astrology, Alchemy, and Transformation. And yes, we will talk about Jungian psychology, the process of psychological alchemy, and of course, the outer planets, because astrologically speaking, those are the planets which trigger those processes. So yeah, we will discuss the most important types of processes, how they are related to the different planets, Saturn and the outer planets. Also, how the different elements process, or in other words, for example, if you have, let's say, dominant fire, how you will experience specific alchemical or psychological transformations. And yeah, we will talk about some practical stuff, like how you can find those times, how you can prepare for them.
So, and you
yeah.
also offer a personal reading with that, whoever wants to. I saw an option there. So I'll put a link below for anyone who is watching, if they're interested to join that live retreat, online retreat for the weekend.
We will have time for questions, for discussion. Everything will be recorded as well. So yeah, it will be a live event, really, with with live interactions.
So we're just gonna kind of start this topic now with you on this video, because I remember one thing. One of my teachers on Wilhelm, and he's Vedic astrologer. Vedic astrologers don't use Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, but he was very, let's say, non-subjective. So he realized that, says, even me as a Vedic astrologer, I'll tell you something. When you have Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune transits, this is the only time the most interesting things happen in life. Say on a psychological level that change you like a person. Otherwise, you might be having external events happening with other planets too. And but unless there is Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune imprint there, she says it doesn't really leave a mark deep there. It's not so memorable. It doesn't change on a deep level. And I've always remembered that. So I'm curious to hear your perspective.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I also think that the changes that come through those experiences, whether those are transits or progressions from the outer planets, those are not just temporary, situations or experiences. after that, you are no longer the same person. You can't go back. You may, sometimes because we like the habit, we like, the comfort zone, whatever, we try to, to go back. It's not working. You cannot go back. It's just moving forward. And those changes, they really change you, who you are inside of yourself. So yeah, life is never the same after important, let's say, the major aspects. And here, by the way, it's an interesting question. What is the difference between the harmonious and the disharmonious aspects? So, for example, a square and a trine. And my experience shows that the energies are kind of similar. The intensity is different completely. Yes, that's absolutely true. But having, for example, Pluto trine your sun will also push you to make some important changes, to go through some deep transformations, because you have a very powerful resource coming your way, so to speak. So you need to find something. You need to find a way to use this resource. Otherwise, it will not leave you. It will not just allow you to lay on the couch or, I don't know, like waste time, or it will push you. And of course, when it's a trine or a sextile, we feel more in harmony with this. We kind of feel like, okay, yeah, I want to do that. Oh yeah, actually,
Yes.
I'm the initiator.
Exactly. That's the difference. That's what I've
Yes.
had Pluto trine my sun years ago, and recently Pluto square it. And similar Plutonian topic came out, but with the trine, I was the curious one wanting to explore those Plutonian topics. Or I thought with the square, I felt like I was forced into that.
Yes, that's usually how we experience it. But the important thing is not to minimize or underestimate the harmonious aspect, and to say that, oh, that's something that will happen on its own. I don't have to really work on that, or it won't be such a major shift. It can still be a pretty major shift. And that's the thing, that the energy, again, you are experiencing the Pluto or Neptune or Uranus, whatever transit or progression you have, you're still connecting to this energy. So that's something to keep in mind, that all aspects are important. And of course, the different planets can affect you in different ways, depending on the level that you are and on the level that you are using those energies. And we can separate things on 3 different levels. The first one is the material level, which is our material reality, the objective world. We know what it is. Then we have also the emotional world, which is something internal, something that we are going through as an inner experience. And the third level is the spiritual or the mental level. And that's, I think, the most important part, to understand that those planets, the outer planets, that, by the way, applies to the rest of the planets as well, but we talk about the outer planets because we are on this topic of transformation. So it makes a huge difference on which level you will use those planets. The experience will be completely different. And experience shows that if we stay only on the material level, the 3 planets can have a pretty difficult energy and honestly quite destructive, especially, for example, if we talk, let's say, about Uranus. If we are only focused, only living in the objective material reality, Uranus can bring destruction, self-sabotage, the feeling like you can't find your own place. You know how you have seen this, we all have, well, at least we both have this Uranus energy, so we are familiar with this, how if you are not using it for something constructive, it makes you feel like you don't have, you can't find your own place. It's like something is buzzing inside of you. So yeah, it can be quite uncomfortable, or it can lead to some kind of not so healthy or extreme decisions, doing something radical, and then you're like, oh my God, what did I do? Like, I'm, going against myself. Or honestly, sometimes some kind of risky activities, some kind of danger, some kind of extreme sports, which is, again, I think some kind of provocation, like Uranus likes to be the provocator, the innovator. But yeah, the truth is that if we stay only on the material level, it's very uncomfortable. The outer planets are never constructive if we are using them only on a material level. Uranus on the next level, on the emotional level, is interesting. Again, not the best way of expression, because it can make us feel like we are never satisfied. We want something different. We want something new all the time. But a positive manifestation could be some romantic feelings. And when I say romantic, I don't mean sentimental, like moon type of, emotions. It's more about some kind of higher ideal. And yes, Uranus can bring mostly spiritual type of love. Uranus is not about the physical love. It's not about, this, for example, like Neptune can bring this, like close attachment, the desire to lose myself in the other person. That's not Uranus. Uranus is about, liberation, having your own world, but at the same time being able to share it with someone else. So it can be also, I think, probably the most exciting love. The most exciting. Yes, maybe not the deepest, but the most exciting, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, the best, or how to say that, like the home for Uranus, this is the spiritual world. Just like if we talk about, in the outside world, what is Uranus representing? This is the sky. So it's something which is above us, something which is higher. And that's the highest manifestation of Uranus. On this level, Uranus can bring the highest rewards. And people who manage to use Uranus on this level, they no longer struggle with the destructive influences, like the need to constantly change something, even if you need to destroy it, or to feel like you don't have a place, or to feel restless. That happens when you are not using it on a mental spiritual level. When you get to the mental spiritual level, it's about, life being interesting, or finding something that you are so excited about, but something that kind of like is also bringing some kind of higher ideal. And of course, astrology here is our best friend. Of course.
Any kind of knowledge as well, yeah. Any kind of that sparks you.
Yes, especially if it's something esoteric or occult, or something that is different from, the tradition or the box or the limitation, everything that opens up your mind. That's when Uranus is really bringing the highest potential possible.
I remember one of my teachers would say, Uranus destroys life, but you're an astrologer, don't worry. Astrologers, because they do this Uranian thing, is not going to hit them so bad.
That's absolutely true. Yes, when you learn astrology, you save yourself so many bad experiences. That is true. And it really, like, we are joking, but it's not a joke. Like when you can process the energy internally on a mental level, on the outside level, things may not change in a way that you don't want them, or it will not feel like the outside world is pushing you, or something else is, like forcing you. It could be like this mental transformation, or spiritual opening, or something that
opening
is
yourself, like to I remember when I had Uranus over my sun, it felt like I changed overnight. I woke up and I was a different person. It was so crazy. And it was connected with falling in love with my husband. So it changed my whole life.
Because your sun is ruling your 7th house. That's why it manifested this way.
I felt like I was connected to some electric grid. I was so excited all the time. I could barely sleep. I was hyperventilating from happiness. And at the same time, because your whole old life is falling apart, you're exactly like the tarot card, the tower, but you don't care because it's like you can't go back to the past. You
Yes.
see something so new, something so exciting, so different. And it can feel very selfish when others are looking from outside. When you have Uranus transits, it's like the father who leaves the family and goes on a trip to Tibet, or or a wife that leaves, or maybe someone who drops a very stable, reliable job to explore something, and everyone is like, wow, how can you do that? But it's like a rebirth. I feel it inside.
Yeah, it can be very exciting. And about Uranus, if you look at the glyph, the symbol, inside of it, it includes the glyph of the sun. It's the only two planets that have a glyph with the dot inside are the sun and Uranus. And that's, again, not an accident, because Uranus is also allowing us to reveal our deeper potential in a way that, like we are somehow developing our identity or our self, as with the Jungian terms. So yes, it might look like, oh my gosh, this is selfish, whatever, egocentric, but it's like a very special part of you, of your identity, is being awakened. And yes, when you feel this alive energy, you cannot help but express this, live this, enjoy this, because actually it can be very problematic if we cut this flow, because it means that you are not allowing yourself to live fully. And that can lead to very serious problems. For different people, it may look in different ways. Sometimes it could be in the body or health-wise, or something else may shake your life if you are not allowing yourself to, to experience this opening, or, to see a part of you which is becoming alive, which is being kind of like, developed and born. So yes, it's intense. Like, as we said, even the trines, whatever aspect you have from the outer planets, especially if this is with the sun, it will be intense. But one thing, which is, it applies to all of the planets, I mean, the 3 outer planets, is that you can't stop this process. You can't you can try to resist this, but it will only make things worse. So it's always smarter to actually become friends with this, or to try to find a constructive way. If we try to stick to the old, or, to resist the change, it will be much more painful and difficult. And we will miss on some important opportunities, because another thing is also that the point is never to suffer. The point is never to, oh my God, my life is being destroyed. I had this fantastic, meaningful relationship, and Uranus came and it destroyed everything. That never happens. If something gets destroyed, it's only because it was no longer relevant. It might have been good for the time of being, but it's time for something new. If something is supposed to continue and be in your life, it will not be destroyed. The outer planets are not destroying everything. And again, the point is not just to, leave you with nothing and to suffer. Something gets, it's okay. Only the things that are supposed to go away will go away. So I guess here it's important also to have a little bit of trust, and a little bit of faith that everything happens for a reason. And again, astrology helps us a lot with that, because when you see that, okay, I have this transit, that's why I'm feeling, first of all, you recognize, okay, I'm not going crazy. It's not me, that's something wrong, it's just something that is supposed to happen. So it gives you a little bit of, I think, understanding and even stability. Even when we talk about Uranus, we may still find a little bit of stability. which may seem, kind of strange, but it's true. Knowledge always gives you inner stability, which is the one that really matters. So that's about Uranus. Maybe talk about Neptune now. Yes, okay. Wow. One thing, by the way, to keep in mind is that the further we go away from the sun, so it means like closer to Neptune than Pluto, the deeper the changes are. So the longer the cycle of the planet is, the deeper transformations it brings. So that means that Pluto's transformations are the deepest because it has the longest cycle, 50 years approximately. 250 years. Then is Neptune, and then is Uranus. So the longer the cycle of the planet, the deeper changes and transformations it brings. So the Neptune transformations are even deeper. This is something that we will discuss during the event for sure, more in depth, because it's very important also to focus on Saturn and Uranus. Saturn as being the last planet of the visible ones, and Uranus being the first one from the invisible ones. And even though Saturn and Uranus are not friends with each other, even in mythology, we know that the father and the son, they're in conflict, and the huge fight there. There is a deep meaning in that. And we always need to be mindful about this connection. Saturn, like, the guide at the end of, the visible world, and Uranus, which is like opening the door to the invisible world. So when we talk about Neptune and then Pluto, we always need to keep in mind Uranus as well, which means that there needs to be a higher understanding or a higher idea, or the higher consciousness needs to be active. If it's not, then Neptune and Pluto will have a very destructive influence, potentially at least. So a higher idea, a higher understanding, or a hunger, desire for knowledge will always help you to process better Neptune and Pluto and to find a meaningful way to use them. So with Neptune, again, on a material level, it is a mess. Let's just call it for what it is. Like, I love Neptune. Like, personally, I would say that I'm quite subjective. I just love Neptune, but I can also see like the messes that come with it. It is true. Like the foggy situations, the illusions, that's Neptune's specialty, living in a dream world, just imagining about something, visualizing it. But the big problem here is to actually manifest it. Again, the connection with reality. That's when Neptune really, really struggles, because again, you need to get through Uranus, but most importantly, you need to get through Saturn. And Neptune and Saturn are like water and fire, like, well, in this case, earth and water, but anyway, then they don't really get along very well. But when they do, that's when we can really, basically materialize our dreams. But the risk with Neptune is that we tend to stay, if we are on the material level again, if we stay only on the subjective level, Neptune just brings complications, lack of clarity. It could be even things like lies, cheats, all kinds of difficulties.
Unless you're an actor and you become famous then, because you're channeling this Neptune. You're
yes,
yes. Sort.
But again, they are doing it through the higher levels, because you need to connect with Neptune also on an emotional level. Then yes, absolutely, creative people, artists, they can really do something with it. But also pay attention how complicated their life is usually. I guess not 100%, but for the most part, from what we can see.
They also mess, Look at Van Gogh, and all the.
Yeah, it's, well, objective. I don't want to get into medical stuff and all of this, but Neptune is a planet which can bring psychological conditions and really psychotic conditions, actually. Uranus is on the level of neurological, so it could be, anxiety, nervousness. Yes, it could be, again, stressful, but it's not psychotic conditions. Psychotic conditions are Neptune and Pluto also, possibly. So with Neptune on the emotional level, wow, things can be so deep, so romantic. And again, you can totally lose yourself, because one of Neptune's specialties is also love for suffering. Neptune loves to be the victim, the great sufferer, to just bathe yourself in pain and suffering and tears and sad music and maybe alcohol and maybe even other stuff. Like, that's what Neptune can also bring. So yeah, this is really something that during Neptune transits, progressions, whatever, we need to be mindful that without consciously recognizing it, we may enjoy this. And of course, if you ask someone, well, do you like suffering? Do you like pain? I think 99% of people will say, no, I don't want this in my life. I don't want things to be like that. Subconsciously, the picture is completely different, especially with Neptune.
You're getting a kick out of it. You should check my playlist when I was having Neptune opposite my moon. It was blues and Bob Dylan and sad songs and Johnny Mitchell and
yeah.
Oh, he loves me, but I'll wait for him. We'll be together one day. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, the impossible love is also Neptune.
Impossible. Someone that have their life separately when you're like, oh.
Yes. And think about why we are doing this, like why we are choosing the impossible love under Neptune's influence, because subconsciously we want to make sure that we will stay in this pattern. Because if you choose objectively real possible relationship or available partner, you're risking of losing this nice experience, the sad songs and feeling sorry for yourself and going even deeper and deeper. And so you need to make sure that the relationship or the partner will stay there in your imagination, being the perfect vision of a partner, not the real human who will maybe disappoint you or have nasty habits or whatever. Like in your mind, in your imagination, it can always be the impossible dream. This is, by the way, very Neptunian, to want to keep your dream for yourself, not to materialize it. Because once you materialize something, and actually that's one of the problems creative people have, to materialize something, to create it, to put it into a form, usually art, it could be other stuff as well, of course. You need to share this with the world, it's no longer just yours, it's out there. So yeah, and it's already concrete, you cannot change it anymore. So Neptune brings this on an emotional level. The risk of putting ourselves in such situations that we kind of like lose ourselves in too much emotion or too many emotions. The highest level, so let's get to the good stuff. The other stuff are also good, but yeah, I guess it depends on how strong your Neptune is and how, able you are to enjoy this. But seriously, yeah, on the highest level, which is the spiritual level, Neptune brings the deepest love, the unconditional love. It could be either a religious feeling or not necessarily, but it may feel like this type of love that is only, the love you can have for God, or you might expect that God is having for you, or the creation. Like, it's really, really deep and meaningful, and you don't have conditions there, you know, there's like lots of acceptance, and it really changes you inside out. Like, this is, I think, the best experience ever. And of course, the highest manifestation of Neptune, when you can love something unconditionally. For people, this may look in different ways. Like somebody may find this really through some kind of spiritual experience, spiritual community, or religion. For somebody else, it could be a love for a child, or love for a partner, or of course, creative work. When you fall in love with what you are doing, music, painting, it could be anything, performing. When you can do that, Neptune can have a really positive impact. So yeah.
I've seen some of the most judgmental people who go through Neptune transit stop being judgmental. Like this passion opens up in them, and it can really remove some edges of a person, makes them more refined. Even if they're going through especially if they're going through the painful things, longing for someone, loss of something or someone. It might be sometimes death even. With Neptune, you lose something and you idealize them like an angel or something. But it's this kind of suffering, like exactly suffering, is what really gives this refinement to the soul. Like you said, exactly, the ability to feel unconditional love somehow.
Yes. And in a way, it can also be very healing for the soul, because Neptune is bringing healing energy. Another thing, by the way, I want to mention is that the 3 planets, when they are very active, the 3 outer planets, they can also open up some special abilities if you have them as a potential. Like, not everybody will become a genius or a psychic or a healer. That's not guaranteed. But if you have it within you as a potential, those transformational phases may unlock this potential. And this is very important to be aware of, because actually this is the time when you can start doing something different in the world, or open up to new abilities. And again, here, the connection with reality is crucial. Like, you need to make sure that you don't go too much into only fantasies. Like, one feet should always be on the earth, but at the same time, if you manage to open for those energies, and again, if you have it as a potential and you have this flow, Neptune can open up either creative potential or the potential of a healer, or someone who can sense, who can have like extrasensoric abilities, or who can be a medium, or sometimes a psychic. Or for some people, this doesn't need to be so extreme, but it could just be intuition, like the ability to sense the environment, to sense the people around you, the atmosphere, like to listen, to learn to listen to your intuition and let it guide you. That's also very beautiful, and that's totally Neptune. So yeah, Neptune is always fun to talk about, and more fun to experience, but yeah. And finally, the biggest player, the smallest planet from the outer planets, but at the same time, the one which is like the most powerful, we can really use this word. This is Pluto. Pluto is always triggering something from the subconscious. And that's why, especially when we are in the middle of the process, it's very difficult to understand what is happening. And more or less, this applies to the other outer planets as well. Like, from the perspective of time, you can really get the point of why something happened, what exactly was happening, and all of those philosophical questions. So in the midst of it, it can be very unknown. And that's why I think there is some fear that is quite common with the outer planets, but especially with Pluto. Like, something is shaking you, and it's so deep, and especially if you tend to have some control issues, like you feel like you need to be in control like all the time, and you need to know what is happening, and you are, like the master of your life. Pluto can teach you a very important lesson. So yeah, we have been through this.
I know. Yeah, I would call it existential terror. I felt terrified. It's not constant because the Pluto transit can be 2 years, but you have those maybe once or twice in this period where you think you're dying. For me, it was literal. It was panic attack after panic attack. I couldn't breathe for weeks and weeks. And there was no reason for that. It just descends on you and you feel death is there, and it's terror. I felt terrorized. I couldn't understand and still don't understand why it happened. What was the reason? How did it change me? I just feel traumatized. Maybe it did something. Maybe later on I'll find out. So
yeah, it can be quite intense. It depends on the aspect also. I have been through the conjunction with my sun. Yeah, it is. It's not a joke. It was very hard. Like, honestly, I would just say it was very hard in the midst of it. But from the perspective of time, if you ask me, like, I will not give this up. Like, I will be, if you ask me, like, would you go through this now again? I'm like a little bit like, do I have to? Like, can I just pass faster through this? Like, it's really intense. But there's lots of value in this, and you really get transformed, and you can find a different resource within you, a different type of strength. But again, it depends on the level on which the energy manifests. On a material level, yes, it can be, especially if we haven't processed the other planets, Uranus and Neptune, which is Uranus having the higher ideal, Neptune the higher feeling of, it could be empathy, it could be compassion, it could be, something like higher love. If this is not developed yet, Pluto can be about desire for control, manipulation, those also not so beautiful things, but that's also part of our experience. So it happens, we need to accept it. But it might feel, yes, like something is destroying our life, or we may feel this impulse again to destroy, to something very intense.
There's often some kind of a situation where you feel there is abuse of power, and we're almost against like existential threat. And for me it was I had three Pluto transits basically from 2019 to this year, and for me it was, I wanted to battle the dark forces, whoever they are. Like, you want to stare darkness into the face. And there's something about Pluto that it removes your innocence, and it's like initiates you in a bit into the darker side of life. And for someone to fight for the good, for someone to join the darker shadow side, depends, where your affiliation and
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. But what's interesting here is that if we look from a psychological perspective, it's always about something within you, like the shadow, the dark side. We all have it. And Pluto, yes, can make you see those parts of yourself that you don't want to admit you have, you don't want to see, you don't want to be in touch with them. But at the same time, there is a huge resource. I'm not saying, you should just allow everything to, come out and destroy and hurt and be violent. Absolutely not. But you should observe and recognize your impulses. And because Pluto has a lot to do with survival and also the masses. The three outer planets, they are collective planets. So those energies are much more than just the individual. And Pluto is about, masses together. And the instincts of the crowd. There are many psychologists who are doing researches in this area, how when people are part of the crowd, they may do stuff that after that they would be so ashamed, they would be horrified by themselves, because that's the Plutonian energy. It, makes you express something that it's a big question, like, is it yours or not? I guess this is the answer here is that this is something collective. It's not entirely yours, but you are also able to express this. It can also come up through you. So it can be scary. Yes, it may feel like, oh my gosh, like there are literally such cases, like people going to a war, and while they are together with others, they are doing violent things that otherwise, they are just, wow, like, that's not me, that wasn't me. Something has been triggered, and something has been expressed. And with Pluto,
it's always a sense of threat with Pluto. There is a threat. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just on TV. Like for me, I was just watching what was happening in the world, and I felt so threatened. And I was like, I need to do something. I need to do something, but feeling powerless. The initial stages, there is threat, you feel powerless. And then what I can say is that actually this kind of states led me to panic attack after panic attack, probably. Obviously, that's the reason, or maybe because I got COVID. I don't know what it was, the chicken or the egg. And after that, I'm like not afraid of those things. I'm not in a ball. I'm not anymore. I'm like, oh, if it happens, it happens. I made my peace with it. I'm here to watch the show. So it kind of, the ultimate goal is to remove this existential fear of something. And of course, the biggest one is death always. But of someone controlling you, of being in a helpless situation, being abused in some way, you experience it with Pluto. So after that, you're not afraid of it anymore. So that's how that's the take I can.
I want to add something a little bit, even though because it's a very interesting topic about the panic attacks, and it's very much related to Pluto, yes, even though other planets may also trigger panic attacks, but with Pluto, it's quite normal. And I have had lots of experience personally. Also, I have worked with people. And what's interesting is that panic attacks are coming when we have an energy barrier. When you have a resource, and with Pluto, that's the thing, that you receive a very powerful resource. But if there is a blockage and you can't find an expression of this resource, this could be anything, like you can have your project, it could be work related, whatever. But if this energy is not expressed, if it stays within you because you have a barrier, then it starts to shake you, and then it triggers the panic attacks, because that's how you release this energy. I'm not sure if you have, maybe you have found this. There were some interesting videos of how animals which are chased, what happens with their body, especially even if they are about to be eaten, they are about to die. But if they run away, after that, the body is shaking, like physically shaking for, I don't know, minutes or whatever, because that's how they release those hormones. So nature is very smart, of course. There are always mechanisms, to release this. So the body needs to do something physically to release this rush of hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, for the animals, but for humans also. Like if you have this powerful resource and there is a barrier, and why you have a barrier, that's another question. We all have many barriers. But anyway, the thing is that it leads to this, because that's how you get rid of the energy, because otherwise you just cannot stand it. It's very subconscious. Nobody wants to do that. But if you have panic attacks, this is because you have a resource which you cannot use constructively. And there are ways to handle with that. But this is an important information, I think, for many people, that panic attacks are not an indication for weakness. It's an indication that there is some kind of resource and strength which you're just not able to use right now or yet. And you just need to find, because once it can go out, it will not need to shake your body and put you through this. So,
I've also felt it's kind of past traumas that might be going out of you through this process, maybe even past life traumas. And at me, it was kind of, I would freeze, I couldn't move. And I would feel like a presence come and like sit on my, it was I would say it was not just physical, it felt physical, but it was like a sleep paralysis type of thing, where like I felt like an entity sitting on top of me. It was Pluto is also connected to black magic and the darker low astral energy. So I felt they were so close to me, and there was like physical astral attacks that felt physical as well. So it sounds very cryptic and scary, but it's almost like I faced the darkness. And after that, I battled with it for 2-3 months. And after that, like I mean, I wouldn't want to feel it again, but I'm on the other side now. So, and you feel more powerful, stronger after that, and not afraid of death even. I made my peace. I thought I was dying so many times. Like now, so I'm not saying anyone who has Pluto transit is going to go through that.
Yeah, of course.
Thankfully, externally, everyone's been well. We went through so many Pluto transits, my whole family. No one's died. We haven't had power struggles emotionally, psychologically. I guess for me, it was this way to go through it. That's my fear of death and so on. So it doesn't have to destroy your life or anything like that. It can be very psychological and internal, I've noticed with Pluto.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially with the sun, but not only. The changes can be internal, but again, it depends on how you process that. And yes, on an emotional level, Pluto can be also very interesting. It can be there like too much attachment, sometimes obsessions or paranoia. That's very Plutonian. Or the feeling like you can't let go of something emotionally, usually a partner or a memory, or it could be trauma. Yes, we tend to get very attached to our pain and our trauma. And actually, this is also, it's a very deep topic, but it's difficult for people to separate with their trauma. You know, it becomes something very precious to you, something really valuable, and to let it go, for some people, at least in the middle of the process, it may sound like minimizing their experience or giving up on part of themselves, or like it's also a process to let go of the trauma. And it's
you're so used to it. It doesn't feel comfortable being without it. It's like, oh, it feels too light. No, it's unconscious how we do it, but
yeah, and you need to figure out what you will do with the emptiness there, like at least where there is the pain and the trauma, like when it's gone, like what is there for you? Again, it sounds strange, but that's how the psyche works. Yeah, we get very attached, and especially with Pluto. And even more if you have a strong Pluto in your natal chart, you can get really attached to all kinds of stuff, including people, particular emotions, destructive patterns, different things. Pluto can also bring a very deep passion. That's also true, like intensity, sexual connection. But again, we need to be mindful here with the desire for control, because usually it also comes with it. And on the highest level, Pluto, on the spiritual level, those could be people with real abilities, like abilities to heal, abilities to transform, or the power to create something for others. I don't want to talk about politics and those things, because it's very unclear. But hypothetically, those could be people who can be on those high positions and potentially might create something for others, not just for themselves. One key, by the way, with the transformations of the outer planets is try to focus on something bigger than yourself. That's how you can really find a constructive way to handle with this energy, including for yourself. But if you do something for others, or not just for yourself, that's usually a big release of the tension, and also it can be very constructive. So with Pluto, yes, you may have the ability to influence other people, to have some kind of healing abilities also, or on the highest levels, it could be like some kind of magical abilities also. That's not where everybody is, of course, but hypothetically it is possible. So yeah, that's what we can also expect from Pluto. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I guess we're just scratching the surface of what you're going to do on your 2-day workshop, which is on the 4th and 5th of February. So much more, because you also use new German medicine, you use so many different modalities, not just astrology, and you've been able to connect them, and psychology and transformational psychological tools for healing as well. So I guess that's more like a workshop than just some kind of a lecture that you're doing for 2 days.
Yes, we will look at like concrete examples with charts. So yes, it would be like a mixture of psychology and astrology, like how you can find this for yourself, but also like what is the meaning. Yeah, we will talk about Jung's work because he has incredible findings in this area. I want to make this practical. So yes, there will be some theory, but I don't want to get people lost in too much information. Like, of course, there will be lots of information, but like technical stuff or too much history, or like, we will just try to focus on the practical side. Like, yes, those are like the stages or the findings, but also that's what's the meaning for you right now and how you can, get through this. And also, it might be interesting to explore in your natal chart, like which are the most important alchemical transformations that you're supposed to get through. That's also a very interesting part. And of course, when you have the transits and the progressions that are relevant to this, all of this will be even more triggered. But yeah, you may also dig deeper into like generally in your chart, like which are those themes or processes that would be the most important for you. So,
wonderful. Thank you. That right down to work, like a true Capricorn. Practical stuff. We're not gonna
lots of practical
philosophize here, but thank you so much, Marina. Wonderful to have you. Thank you for your insights of the 3 levels, how planets influence us. And yes, if you'd like a personal reading with Marina, I'm putting a link below, or also to attend that workshop online. And also she offers a reading with the workshop, which includes the workshop and a reading from her if you're interested for those topics. Thank you so much again. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for sharing. There were amazing stories that people are sharing about their transits. Thank you, because you're helping others who are coming here with those stories, and some of them were very nice stories, not only scary like ours. So thank you so much. Have a great week ahead. Bye-bye.
Bye.